Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is your girl Mitzi, and this is Mitzi. Let's think about it. Today, we are thinking about the corporate culture. That's truly something to think about, especially if you're thinking about going into the corporate world. Is there a culture? Is there a type of feeling that you need to really get prepare yourself for? So, luckily for me, I have Maria here who is going to be helping us out, really understand and really thinking about this topic in a certain way. So, thank you again, Maria, for coming on my show. I just have to ask you, let's just rip off this band-aid and really get to it, right? What made
Yes.
you realize that there was a culture in this corporate world?
Oh gosh. I would say, for me, I wanted to be in corporate forever. And I know that sounds it's interesting. I was actually just reading a journal. I've kept like so many of my journals from when I was younger. When I was 24, I wrote like all of these things about like what I wanted in a company because I was, seeking. I was out of college, graduated college at 22. I won the title of Miss Kentucky, which actually took me all the way through to when I was 23. So then I got married and actually took like the first job that was offered to me. So I just like kept going, and it was within the government field. So I was recruited right out of government though, actually at an event into corporate. And so when I think about like what I was like that culture, what I wanted to be a part of was something bigger than me. I wanted it to be something that I could really be a part of, but that I could also the phrase that's coming to mind is like sink my teeth into, that I could just learn, that I could grow, I could develop all of that. When I started to see that and I changed jobs and industries over time, of course, over my 18-year career. But when I started to see that shift happening, it was more so a shift in me and realizing that my core values no longer aligned with the culture or the company that I was with. And so I decided, you know what, I think this is this is the message. This is like that signal from the universe. That's like, I think it's time for you to take, take the leap and take a risk and bet on yourself. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I like that. That's a perfect response. You have to start somewhere. You know what I
Yes.
mean? And the fact that you were like, this is kind of the direction that I want to go into, and you dove right in, but then you realize like, you know what? I don't feel aligned anymore. I don't feel like it's right anymore. The fact that you were able to not only understand that, but be like, you know what, Maria, it's time for a change. And you made that change. And that is something beautiful because there are people who are so stuck that they can't even acknowledge that. So the fact that you were able to have that for just yourself, that wake up call, I mean, that's an amazing step going forward. But I guess to go back on topic because I'm one that loves to veer off. So let's drive back on topic.
Same. Same.
Because one of the things that I realized that I didn't realize that I liked the corporate culture until I actually got into a company that was corporate and huge and humongous and worldwide, and it was a global industry. And I didn't realize like it's actually not that bad for me personally. Some people, they're not for it. They can't stand being a number. They can't stand not having a voice. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? But for me, I felt like there was place for me to still have a voice, but without
Mm-hmm.
being the center of attention. You know what I'm saying? Like, but just because I've always been working in a place where the attention always ended up getting refocused, you know what I mean? Or it's just always switching. So to have that corporate culture to just be a number was just nice for me, for me personally. Um, but I just want to know what really makes a culture in this corporate world. Like like for you, how are there like points that you try to like select or you notice automatically?
Yeah, there are a few things I would say. To me, when I'm building company culture alongside teams, so what I do and the work that I do, I have my consulting firm, MMS consulting firm, and really what we do is people and leadership development. So we're building team cohesion. We are increasing employee engagement, retention, and really aligning employees with why they work for your company. Because my thought process always was when I was in corporate too, is if I don't know why I'm showing up to this company, well then probably not going to be the best representative of this organization. So I need to know why I'm showing up every day so that I am putting forward not only my most authentic self, but they're getting the best version of me too as a representative of their company. So we do a couple things, and it really starts with building out those core goals, the three core goals. And so participants in my retreat spend a full day with me. We start in the morning, we go all the way through. We outline their word of the year. We're building their own individual core values and mission statement. What's really fun is to see if they can identify their company's mission statement or their company's core values. And so flip charting them or just having them up on the screen, giving them a few options and asking them, can you identify your mission statement of your company? And the idea is not to pressure test them and put them under the microscope to be like, you don't know your company's mission, but it's just to open their eyes to, if you don't know it, then how can you go out and represent that to your customers? How are you then embodying that and living that daily? So I think that culture really starts when we align our personal and professional worlds together. However, sometimes in corporate and in work environments, we sometimes show up as two different people, and we're asked at times to show up as two different people. I very much felt that on my own journey, was like showing up, as someone completely different at work than I was at home. And I needed those two me's to align. I needed them to become one. And so when that synergy began to happen, I realized that then I was showing up as my most authentic self, personally and professionally. I was bringing every experience that I had from, my mom journey, my motherhood life, and just past previous work experiences, et cetera, into my professional journey, which was leading and managing a team and helping them build out to become the best version of themselves. So I think when you have that component of really aligning a culture around personal and professional development, and then challenging them to understand who they are and why they're showing up, you have the trifecta of building out a really good, solid company culture.
I like that. I like that very much because it helps you keep that aligned. You know what I mean? To keep that as one. Because the fact that you said that you were living basically two different lives, it just shows that yeah, you're not the only one. A lot of the companies, corporate companies, they kind of expect that. So to have that, bring that back to just no, like we could just be one. You don't have to be someone else when you come into work and you clock in. You can be you, authentically you, who you are, as soon as you clock in and as soon as you clock out. There doesn't need to be any type of change as long as that those core values are valued, actually valued and met. And I think one of the biggest problems that I've seen is that they don't a lot of people avoid the corporate industry because they don't have that alignment. They don't have that distinguishment of like, oh yeah, this is our core values, this is what we believe in. But once you're actually implementing it into your job and your everyday, it doesn't add up. It's the absolute opposite. They say, oh, we're a family environment, but then they give you a guilt trip for even taking any type of time off. So it's like those big things usually lead people away. But that's in my personal opinion. But in your opinion, please, what has been certain things that you've noticed that kept people away from this corporate life?
Mhm. Everything you mentioned is spot on. I mean, it's exact. That's when you have that dissonance, when you have that you're saying one thing but doing another. Listen, I mean, I think it happened recently with a baby company where a mom requested time off to travel to, I think, support they were adopting, and I think the child was going to be in the NICU. And this was a baby company, and the CEO, was like, no, I'm not granting you the additional time. And so to your point, that is a perfect example of an organization not living up to the core values or the mission of what it is that they do. They're a baby company. They're supporting moms. That's their whole identity as a brand.
Yeah.
And yet that's the message that they're sending. And so, of course, apologies are made, oversights were admitted. But at the same time, that's what stings and what sticks with the rest of the people, with everyone else who was a customer was, wow, that was your reaction in that moment. So I think it just speaks to the overall, a couple of things. It speaks to the fact that social media is a huge aspect of our lives today, corporate lives. Corporations have them, and that's where people can take to share their like or dislike for a particular company or the way that people, if they're treated wrongly. Social media is a great outlet for that. So you have to be aware that that's going to happen. I think there's also the aspect of sustainability, and people want to know that you align your core values with something that's going to do good for the world, and then the third thing I think is you're truly living out those, your actions are met with the words that you're putting out there. And so if you say that you're all about people, then you better be all about people, and you better be, showing up and showing it every day in the work that you're, and how you're treating your people.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think you really said it perfectly as well. Because one of the things that I love doing is looking at quotes and sharing quotes. That's my thing. So I've seen this one quote and I really want to know your opinion on it. So if you don't mind,
Sure.
the quote says, "There's no magic formula for great company culture. The key is just to treat your staff how you would like to be treated." What is your thoughts on that? I know we kind of touched base on that previously, but Maria's mind. What does Maria think about when she hears that?
I think it's great in theory. But I think
Very.
also, yeah, I think that I think how I want to be treated might be different from someone else. So I think
Very
while
true.
I might lead from a certain perspective and think, well, this is how I would want to be led, or this is how I would want to be treated, someone else might have a completely different perception of that. I think people management is one of the most, if not the most, single difficult thing we do in our life, because managing people, we are each so dynamic, unique, nuanced. We have, certain tendencies that someone else might look at and think that's odd. Someone else might think, you're too sensitive. You aren't serious enough. You're too, there's so many different things. So while I do agree with that basic principle of kind of like the golden rule, like, treat people how you would want to be treated. And yes, I would want to be respected. I would want to be heard. I would want to be seen. I would want to know that I was a valuable team member. I think that it goes a little bit beyond that, because it also has to be rippled throughout the organization. So one singular leader could have that, and that could be a great leader. But then if your team gets, misplaced or put with someone else, or someone moves and, you leave that role and it's not echoed throughout the entire organization. And it's really hard to sustain that company culture. It really does have to it has to permeate throughout the entire organization.
I think you really brought up a really great point. The fact that not everybody perceives the same. You know what I mean? Just because I may project out some type of kindness, somebody else may not see that as kindness. They may see that as condescending or just, another
Yes.
form. So
Mhm.
that is a very good point. You know what I mean? That people do need to think about when it comes to just having a certain culture in your corporation or in your business, because makes it hard to actually identify where that is, you know what I mean? That line. And I think that's where it has to come down back down to the core values. Because if my core values are family and this is how I treat my family, well then this is what you're going to see. This is what it's going to represent. This is how it's going to flow. But the fact that you said it has to echo, man, that right there, that has a really big effect because we see it all the time in franchises. You know what I mean? In franchise, you could get one franchise that does a great job, their food is top quality, and then the next franchise is downhill because they don't hold that same ripple
Yes.
effect. So that is truly, truly something to think about. Wow. That's a thinker right there. I mean, so I guess my next question would be is like, would that really mean that management sets the tone? Because the CEO or the president, yeah, they started it, they're the foundations, but management's really there. So I
Oh,
mean, What is your opinions on that?
Well, I mean, I believe firmly in the quote that people don't leave companies, they leave bosses, they leave managers. And so the ability to adequately manage a team is not something that is easy. It is difficult because, like I said, anytime you're managing people, you're managing a lot of different personality types, but you're also managing a lot of different backgrounds, where people come from. Their experiences have shaped the way that they think, the way they feel, the way that they, respond to certain situations. So it all comes down to that leader being able to communicate effectively with each team member. I'm not a one size fits all approach. I think sometimes there are things that have to be done, within a corporate setting. Sometimes you just have to blanket, messages, and things are the way that they are. But as much as we can tailor our communication individually to each employee, how we know that it's going to be best heard and best reciprocated and understood from them for them is always, in my opinion, the best way to operate, because then you're engaging with them one on one. I liken it to parenting. I've got two teens, and I always likened my and we also have a 7-year-old as well. So, but with my older two, our conversations are turning into it's just a different speak. It's just a different tone. When they're younger, it's helping them understand why things, they can't do certain things. Or do you understand, why we don't want you to touch the stove, because this could happen. So you're teaching them, you're helping them understand all of these like cause and effect type of things. As they get older, though, it becomes them coming to you and you being able to flip the script on them and say, well, what are your thoughts? How would you handle it? I know you're asking me, but I want to know what your gut is telling you. What are you thinking? Now you're empowering them to think for themselves. And I think as good leaders, we have to do that as well. If we trust our people because we hired them to do the job that we hired them for, if we're constantly putting them through the litmus test, no, don't do that, don't do that. Why would you do this? Why this? Why all the things? We have to empower them to make their own decisions. It's the same thing of going home and parenting your child and saying, okay, well, that's interesting. So you want to stay out with your friends till midnight. What are your thoughts on that? What are your thoughts? Do you think that's wise? Or you tell me. I would love to hear your thought on it. You're at least giving them an opportunity to feel heard, to feel seen, and to give validation and credibility to their own thoughts. It's the same in a company setting.
Yeah, I like that very much because it brings you back the power within yourself. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Because one of the biggest things that I hear all the time is that this new generation doesn't like the way that the old corporate culture is because it requires more out of them than that actually is required. So when you ask them that question, like, well, how does that really make you feel? I mean, that makes you stop and really think about it because in this day and age, we expect life to operate in the old form, but in a new way. And it's sometimes it's constant clashing because people don't know how to have that transition. People don't know how to have that value of somebody else's opinion besides their own opinion,
Right.
and it makes it very hard to work as a team when you are so stuck in a certain perspective or in a certain way because then everybody there's always somebody that's gonna be the bad egg in the group, but it doesn't mean that it means that that's what that is. The company represents that. So I like that very much. I think that is something interesting that people do really need to think about. And I'm curious if you could tell your younger self anything before you jumped into this lifestyle of consulting and going into the corporate world right after. I mean, it seems like it was nonstop for you. So what would you tell your younger self if you could tell your younger self anything?
Mm. I would say to slow down. I would say to, um, gosh, stop taking yourself so seriously and stop taking, um, the job so seriously. That just to have fun and to enjoy the journey of learning through the ups and downs, through the failures, through um, the tough moments, because there's so much that you actually learn and experience that when you come through the other side, you realize was much more beneficial than had you just had it smooth sailing.
That's interesting. very interesting because you're right. Sometimes we have to just take that second and just realize it's not that big of a deal. It's okay. Just breathe. So, so
Yeah.
I'm curious, what made you actually want to help consult these corporations to help them get their culture in aligned and ready to go to be more sustainable with this new changes with these generations that are obviously changing everything along the way.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I consider myself like a grandma of the millennials, but I like to say older sister. But it
You can
was
say the
one.
auntie.
Yeah, yeah, yes, there you go. The aunt. I love that because it was once brought to my attention that it was the grandma of the millennials. I was like, I don't know if I like
No,
that.
auntie sounds a lot better than grandma.
I like that. I like that. That's what I'm going with from now on. Yes.
It's okay. You can have
Yeah.
it.
I do align with a lot of I think the millennial approach to life that I don't live to work. I work so that I can live, and and I also do see some of the Gen Z in me as a little bit. I love an organization that stands for something more than just profit, and I love organizations that give back to communities that are really rooted in the communities in which they, whether that's where their corporate office is or just globally, sustainability, that they're constantly working to better understand how what they're doing is a part of the bigger global footprint of environmentally, et cetera. So no matter what industry they're in, but for me, what really sparked all of this was just my own journey through corporate. My first leadership role, my first really big leadership role as an assistant vice president, I was almost fired from for really no reason other than I just wasn't liked by the person who came after the one who hired me. So it just kind of came down to that because the team was actually pretty successful, but we were also successful by not really knowing why. We just all were really ambitious. We were all drivers. We all wanted to succeed and to make the team. And so what happened was that one conversation, that one meeting and moment really changed the trajectory of just my own approach to work and just really my own kind of my path. Because I started to see that, man, you know what? There might be a little bit of truth to some of the things, even though the numbers are all looking great. I don't know if I know exactly who I am. And I sacrificed a lot for this role. And I've been willing to give whatever. I mean, I was gone all the time. I was away from my family. I was traveling. I was building out the team. We were unfortunately having to say bye to some team members, bringing new team members on, getting them onboarded and up and giving all the support that I possibly could give. And in the midst of it, not really knowing, why am I doing this? What is the purpose in all of this? And do I really even enjoy this? Because I am making a lot of sacrifices and am I even happy? Like, what do I want? So I think it was a turning point for me. It was that fork in the road of deciding that, does my ambition continue to drive me forward just because I want to succeed and be ambitious? Or is it that I truly want to pour into this team and to pour into others to build something that we all can be really proud of? And that was the moment when things started to shift for me to say, okay, I want to help other people. Like, I want to pour into others because I know that we're better when we're more than one. So anywhere where I can be in community or in connection with another person, I'm automatically going to be smarter, better, more agile. I'm going to be able to do more because it's the two of us working together. And so my entire perspective shifted over time, of course. It took me a while to it's literally like moving the Titanic, it felt like. And then over time, though, we got there and the team was successful. We were successful. And I mean, I'm still friends with some of them to this day. So when I think about that journey, it is really what started to kind of propel me forward to to the success that I have now. And then when I left corporate, I just knew that that's what I wanted to do, was to help people. I didn't want people to have the same experience as me. And I figured if I could mitigate that and I could get in front of organizations to say, no, 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 don't be me. Don't show up as two different people. My mom is in the room, that are struggling, or, even my dads, I have some of them who will share the same type of concerns. Yes, I feel like I'm doing the same, and maybe societally I don't get as much flack for it, but I still equally feel that pressure of, if I have to go pick up my kids, or if I have to go do this. So we share in community some of those fears, some of those pressures, all in an effort to tell people it's okay to show up as you are, bring your best self. And show up to work, of course, show up to like be here. If you're going to be here, then be here. But let's do this. And that's really where it was all born out of, was just my own journey and wanting to help people prevent, if I could, some of that, and just help them understand that them being who they are is going to be better than any other way they're going to ever show up in their life.
I love that. I think that's perfectly said. Just because people do need to remember that, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
Just do what you do best, and that's just be you. And
Mhm.
whatever circumstances that you in, whatever trade or skill that you have, it's good just because it's coming from you and it's coming from a good place. And
Mhm.
that's something that a lot of people need to remember, is that what are you doing it for? You know what I
Right.
mean? What is your purpose? Like, what are you really doing this for? And I love that you asked that question to yourself. Like, am I just doing it because I'm ambitious and I know I can get things done? You know what I mean? Because if that's the
Yeah.
case, then anybody's doing it all the time.
Yes,
But it
exactly.
really comes down to you and in your heart, and just knowing like this is what I want. And the fact that you didn't want people to make those same mistakes, and you decided to just share that's beautiful, absolutely beautiful, because you could have stayed quiet, you could have just gone in your own direction and done your own thing, but you were like, you know what, Maria, we're going to get this right, we're going to do right, and we're going to produce right. And I love that, because people need to start moving forward in that direction. And I don't I hate time because it's escaping us, it's going right through my fingers, because I wish we could just keep on talking about this, but time is escaping. So I just want to ask you one last thing.
Yeah,
What
sure.
can be some lasting words of wisdom that you can leave me and my audience off with, to keep on thinking? Even though you already gave us a lot of great points to keep
Aw.
thinking, what can be some lasting words?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of questions that I always ask myself whenever I am thinking about, creating, thinking about creating the vision for my year and what I am outlining for my goals. I just always center myself with, why, and what, so why do I want to accomplish this? Why am I doing this? So why do I want to climb the ladder? When I was 24, I had a completely different opinion and idea around what that looked like for me, than I do now. And now, like I said, my why is so different. My core values at 24, before I started having children and building a family, are significantly different than what they are now. What is important to me now, wasn't then, and probably, vice versa. Now I think there's some foundational type things. I've always wanted to be honest and a good friend, and be someone with integrity and someone who cares and genuinely
Yeah.
cares for people, someone who will always help others. So those core values have stayed, but now my core values are centered so much around the family that I'm building and the legacy that I'm leaving behind, and some of those core values of deep connection weren't necessarily there when I was younger, because I didn't really know what it was like to connect really deeply and truly with someone. So I would say understanding who you are, why are you showing up every day for the work that you're doing? And if you have difficulty answering that, then maybe it's time to just evaluate, do a little self-assessment, do the pros and cons, assess what you love about your job, assess maybe what you don't like. Listen, there's parts of my job as an entrepreneur now that I don't necessarily love, but I have to do. I have to, but it makes the other aspects of the work that I do that much more enjoyable, because it's literally ripping that Band-Aid off. It's just it's swallowing that medicine. It's doing all the things that we don't want to do. I can't avoid, unfortunately, those things. I wish I could, but I can't. So there's always going to be aspects of jobs that aren't no job is perfect. So, but acknowledging like the things that really light you up about the work that you do. And then if you happen to find that you're in disalignment, then it's a great opportunity for you then to start evaluating and saying, then what is it that I truly want? And that would be the next thing that I would ask.
There you go. You got to ask yourself these hard questions, ladies and gentlemen. You have to have that moment of self-reflection because I think everything that you just said makes the person who's listening really stop to think about like what are my core values? What are my values now than they were 5 years ago? Or what my values will might be different. I think the fact that you said earlier, writing down in your journal and just seeing the difference in your timeline. I think that's a beautiful way to just acknowledge the fact that you have grown, you have evolved, and you're ready to move forward in a positive way. And the fact that you said that there's no job perfect, honey, oh, pen drop because it needs to be said more than once. Okay.
Yeah.
There's too many people out here thinking that, oh, the job is the problem, but then you go to the next job and the problem is still following you. There's probably a common denominator, and it's a
Yes.
you. You know what I'm
Yes.
saying? So
Yes.
I say it all the time. There's always going to be stress. There's always going to
Yes.
be something that's going to be pushing you to the edge, but it comes down to how are you going to handle it,
Mhm.
and how are you going to
Exactly.
evolve and
Yes.
grow and move forward from it, So I think this is such a great time and such a great topic. So thank you so much, Maria, for coming on my show. And if anybody wants to know more about Maria, please have her lovely photo on my website. You can go check out her website and just let's click it, and you'll find all the greatness that Maria has to offer to the world.
Yes.
So always, always, always keep thinking, y'all. Bye.